Hello there, my name is Seto Kaiba, and this is my submission for Summer Games Done Quick for the Final Fantasy VI randomizer called Worlds Collide. So you're probably thinking, how do you speedrun a RPG, a randomizer of an RPG, especially if it's a linear game? And for people who have played Final Fantasy VI, you'll remember that the last third of the game, once you get the airship in the World of Ruin, is, unlike most other Final Fantasies, it's very open world. You get the airship, you can go anywhere, you can go fight the last boss immediately, or you can do a whole bunch of miscellaneous side quests to recruit characters and get treasure and items. And it was with that kind of philosophy that Worlds Collide was born from. It is a open world take on Final Fantasy VI. You'll see when we start that we'll start with the airship, and we can easily go between the World of Bounds or World of Ruin. And our goal, as you can see here under Objective A, Unlock Final Kefka, we have to find 8 characters. We'll start with 3, so we have to find 5 more. We have to find 10 espers. And the reason I'm doing this quick introduction is to kind of explain how that works, how you find these characters and espers, because it's a little unique. We call these checks in Worlds Collide, where you go and do these different checks. They could be a dungeon or another story event, and at the end of it you get rewarded with a character or an esper or a high level item. And what checks you can do are dependent on what characters you already have. They are related to whatever characters are currently you've already unlocked. So as an example, you cannot go do Phantom Train unless you have Sabin, because the Phantom Train in Final Fantasy VI's story is part of Sabin's scenario. You can't do Phoenix Cave unless you have Locke. And so that makes routing rather unique and interesting in Final Fantasy VI. It makes it very similar to the Ocarina of Time or Link to the Past randomizers, where since we'll have different characters on each and every run, we're recruiting characters as we're running through, because we need to find 8 to go to the final dungeon and beat the game. What we can do, where we can go, what we can check, will vary drastically from run to run. Every run's route is completely different, no two are alike, and different checks are different as well, which we'll see as we start going through this run. So I didn't want to take up too much time, but I did want to kind of explain that because it is rather unique for Worlds Collide, and it's important to indicate progress. And the last thing before we start is I am doing commentary over a run I've already previously recorded. I stream this game very often. I also do a lot of commentating on races in our community, and I found that I am not very good at running and commentating at the same time. There's a lot of decision making, a lot of math, a lot of analysis that runners are doing in their head throughout the entire hour and a half to 2 hour run, and it makes commentating on it really hard for me, at least. Since this submission is for a race at GDQ, I will be leaning very heavily on couch support during it, and because of that, I decided that recording the run beforehand and commentating on it afterward gave better quality commentary for this actual submission than if I tried doing it live. It was not going to be a reflection of the actual run at GDQ itself, since a lot of that will be offloaded onto my couch, and along with the other runners that are submitting as part of my race. So just going to explain that when you see the little VLC progress bar in a second. So I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get started. So you'll see immediately as soon as we start, I'm going to pull up my menu and I'm going to take a look at my characters. I'm looking at my characters and I'm checking their abilities, because abilities and stats are randomized. Stats have a 20% standard deviation from regular from the original stats. So someone like Realm will still have a lot of magic, but it could be 20% higher or lower, as an example. And so I'm looking at my characters and I'm immediately trying to plan out a route, because where I can go is now dependent on who I have. But the first thing is I kind of go to Narsh here, which is a pretty common opening start. Unlike other randomizers, the initial route can change drastically even at the very beginning, depending on what characters you have. But Narsh is, for a lot of combinations, what you're going to do first. And I have kind of two goals at the beginning before I really start doing a lot of checks. And my goals are to check shops and find items. because I want equipment and items that could get me through the early game and stuff I would need for the late game. The more chests I open up, the more higher odds of me finding good things, or higher odds of me finding stuff that maybe I don't need, but I can sell for a lot, like these Doom Darts. So then I can buy things I actually need. So you'll kind of see me do that. I'm going to be going to a lot of towns at first that have chests and be checking their shops. Taking note of what they are. Sometimes I might come back if there's something I can't afford that I don't quite need right now. And you can kind of see here, I don't see anything in the weapons and armor and relic shop I like. I did buy a few items because one of my starting abilities on Sabin is throw. And so that's actually something I now have to look for is throwables in shops. Where if I did have a throw ability, that might not be something I would be looking for. And we're immediately going to see our first rule change. This is something that actually, when I talked about how routing can be different at the beginning, this is not something I would do normally, but I have a Go-Go in my party. So, like I said, what checks I can do depend on what characters. And in Go-Go's case, he only has one check, which is the Zone Eater dungeon here. And so I need to have my entire party be hit with the moving gulf by the Zone Eater, and I will enter this dungeon as you need for Go-Go. And at the end of this dungeon, there could be a character, or an esper, or an item for me to find. I'm doing this now because this is what we call a free check. I don't have to fight any bosses here. I don't have to fight any random encounters. I can run through here, and so I'm going to do this now because, again, I don't need to have good equipment yet or anything. And also because this dungeon has a fair amount of treasure, and since I'm looking for a lot of treasure now to sell, and I'll be going to most of my shops within the first 12 minutes or so of this run, hitting these up now for the treasure makes them a little bit more valuable because I can sell them and buy stuff more immediately. This check can be a little RNG because that little green guy you saw there, if he touches you, you fall off the bridge and have to restart. So I kind of was just waiting for him to move past me, which is pure RNG, how he decides to move. Then I take a safety save here, because this area actually is a little unique, because this ceiling falls, and if you get stuck underneath it, you get an automatic game over and have to restart. So you can see I took a save beforehand, so that if that did happen, I would lose a lot less time upon restarting. And I'm looting here, and it's a pretty short dungeon. A lot of our runners, some runners don't like it because of that green guy, we call him the bridge troll, is rather RNG and can be a little frustrating getting by, but I get a pretty decent time here, and I find Gal. Gal being a little unique because he actually doesn't have a fight command, but he has two abilities. He's the only character where that's the case. So he ends up being a little unique. And I restructured my party, and now I'm going to continue on with my original strategy of going to towns to shop and to loot. And that'll be for the first 10 minutes or so of this run, which is a good time to maybe talk about. It's a randomizer. What is randomized? You've already seen that stuff like chests are randomized. What I'm finding in chests are random. All the chests in the game are mixed up and randomly distributed. And of course, you saw that shops are also randomized. Stats are randomized. What abilities my characters are randomized. We've seen those already. But there's plenty of other things that are randomized. For instance, characters can equip items that they could equip in the original game, but also for any given item, there's about a 33% chance a character can additionally equip it. So something like the Valiant Knife, Locke can equip it because you can equip it in the regular game, but for any other character, there's only a 33% chance when the seed is generated that a character could equip that item. So you know that if you find that item, you know for sure Locke can use it, but you don't know if other people can or not. What enemies are in which areas are randomized, and where bosses are also randomized. In order to balance it out, bosses are scaled so that endgame bosses can be, they're not impossible early on, and I'll get into how the scaling works in a little bit, but those are also randomized. Espers are randomized as well. Espers still have the same abilities that they have in vanilla, but what spells they teach and what stat boosts they give are completely randomized. And then other miscellaneous stuff, what the auction house sells, what's in the Coliseum, those are randomized, and there's a few other things we'll kind of get into that are randomized as well. But that's kind of the gist of it: is what abilities, what magic you can learn, what bosses are where, what's in what treasure chests. All those are randomized, and a lot of that randomization can be controlled. Unlike, say, A Link to the Past randomizer, which has a few presets, and that's kind of about it. Worlds Collide has taken a heavily customizable flag set route. So what you're seeing, what we're racing and submitting to GDQ, is what is typically raced as part of a standard competition, but that's not the only kind of speedrunning and events that we do with World Collide. We can change everything from how many characters and espers to get in to Kefka's Tower to what kind of treasures found. We can make things harder or easier. We can limit what abilities people can find or what characters we can get. There's a whole bunch of different customization. I won't get into that because that's the point of the submission, but that is one of the cool things about Worlds Collide and racing it, is that you have a whole bunch of customization on what kind of categories you want to run, essentially. But you can see right now I'm in South Figueroa, which is a town that every runner goes to because it has some of the highest density of treasure in the game, and on top of having some shops I can buy from. And I did pick up an experience egg off a barrel in the middle of town, and that item in particular is going to be very good. It increases experience of someone by 50%. Finding that this early in the game, when we haven't taken any fights, when we're at level 3, is really good because it means we're really going to get a lot of bang for our buck. And we're going to throw it on a character and then leave it on them, and that character is going to be very powerful by the end of our run. Sorry, taking a sip of water. So, like I said, that's what I'm kind of doing here. I'm going to different towns, I'm getting treasure, I'm buying stuff, and it really can vary from runner to runner. Every runner kind of has different strategies. Every runner will come to South Figueroa here because it's easily one of the best value, but some of the other towns you'll see me check in a second, there are runners who don't necessarily check that. Everyone kind of has their own strategy. For me, I like to shop around a little bit more than other racers would, because if you happen to find a really good weapon or a very good item in a store, as long as you have money, you can keep going back and buying more copies of it, and that can really break open a game. And therefore, I really value shops a lot, and that's a really big part of my strategy. The other part of my strategy is, you saw me already go to Zone Eater and do Go-Go's check. I like to do these free checks I talked about. I like to do those early. I like to do as many as possible, hoping I get more espers, because the more espers I get, the more odds are an esper has a stat bonus associated with it, which would give a stat increase every time you level up with that esper equipped. If you can find more stat bonuses when you're still level 3 before you actually take in fights, you can really increase a stat of yours, which is why I'm buying this magic site here. And the downside of that is, I mentioned bosses being scaled. And the way that works is, you start the game and you are level 3. And all enemies in the game are also level 3. But every time I get a character, or I get an esper during a check, every enemy in the game levels up 2 levels. So since I have found one character, and I have found one esper, all enemies in the game are level 7, and I'm still level 3. 4 levels isn't as big of a deal late in the game, but this early in the game, 4 levels is a lot. Enemies now are significantly more powerful than me, and you'll see that I will get one more esper in a second, which means enemies will be level 5, or level 9 when I'm still level 3, making them significantly stronger than me. So you can get into a case where if you do too many dead checks early, you have a hard time actually even leveling up. With most RPGs, you hear about people grinding up levels, but stomping and grinding for levels takes time. If I'm stomping and I'm taking fights that aren't directly getting me progress, I am not actually gaining progress. I'm spending time grinding. So ideally, I want to be doing bosses while low level, or doing checks that force me to fight fights anyway, so that since I have to fight these fights anyway, I'm getting the experience without stopping and fighting unnecessary fights and leveling up. So that also factors into the routing that I mentioned, that I have a certain amount of checks available to me right now based off the 4 characters I have, and I'm trying to figure out what the best combination of checks to do. Geographically, what are closest to each other, but also in this case, what check can I do that maybe causes me to fight a few fights before I fight a boss in order to get a few levels. And you'll see that in a second, because now that we found Gal actually has a check that makes it very easy to do that. But first, I am heading over to Jador here. This will be the last talent I am going to check before I'm going to start my actual hunt for espers and characters in earnest. And the reason I'm checking here is that Jador has a auction house. And there can be up to 2 espers available for purchase in this auction house. It could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 2. And we'll know when we come into the auction house in a second. The guy at the front will tell us whether glowing stones are available, which means that there are espers to buy. Oh, and real quick before that, I'm coming in here and I'm selling things because I'm going to need about 30k for the auction house. But I also see that there are super balls available to buy here. And I haven't talked too much about what items have been important, but super balls do a random amount of damage that typically is pretty high, especially early game, and it's independent of levels. So buying them at level 3 is a really easy way to kill bosses early that might be more powerful than me. So I'm excited here. I finally found them in shops, and I buy 3 of them in order to help me with the early fights. But I'm going here to the auction house, and I am I'm checking to see what is available. And you can see I didn't get an esper, and I restart. Because I walked out of town, I saved, and I then come back in and restart. There are 4 possibilities here of espers, of item slots for the auction. I think one appears at 50%, one has a 25% chance of appearing, the other 2, 12.5%, I believe, when you go to the auction in the World of Balance. And again, I don't know if there's 1 or 2 espers. I just know there is a esper still remaining, and I happen to get I found an esper, so the esper siren. So now I'm going to bid for it. I can also go do the auction house in the World of Ruin, in which the odds are different. It's still the same 2 espers. World of Ruin, you have the ability to buy out the rest of the auction house. So the items that you saw me, the item you saw me reset on in World of Ruin, I could buy that item and it will remove from the pool and won't pop up again. And then you can keep you can buy all of them until only the espers remain. It's slower, and also it costs money. It costs about 90k to buy out everything in World of Ruin, where buying just the espers in World of Balance is only 30k. But it could potentially take longer because it's a more dice roll. So I'm taking a little bit of a risk here by trying over and over again in World of Balance Auction House. I found an esper, and you'll see here in a second, this guy still says there's glowing stones available, so we know that this auction house in the sea actually had 2 espers. And so I'm now trying for the second one. I made a mistake here where that weapon there, the Atma weapon, actually is a very good sword. And that's the other advantage of coming to the World of Balance auction house, because items don't get removed from the pool if you buy it, which actually can be great because it means that if it's something like this, the Atma weapon, which is one of the best weapons in the game, I could theoretically buy infinite of them, which is really great. I kind of had the finger on the reset button there because I was looking for the Esper sprite, and I hit reset, but this time when I saw it, I said, no, I'm actually going to want it this time, and I'm going to bid for it. Which kind of gets back to what I said before about the randomization. And one of the things I said was that what items people can equip, they can equip anything that they can equip in vanilla, but there's only a 33% chance they can equip items that they couldn't equip in vanilla. And you'll see here in a little bit, when I first go into my menu to start equipping things, in the original game, Edgar, Locke, Celeste, and Terra can equip the Atma weapon. And right now, I don't have any of those characters, and it turns out the characters I do have, with the exception of Gao, who doesn't have a fight command, none of the characters I have can actually use the use the Atma weapon. Gao can. We'll see it right here. No, I'm wrong. Gao could not in this one. No one can actually use the Atma weapon. So I bought this sword that no one can use. So I'm going to hope I can find a character later who can use it, because it's a very powerful sword. But that's part of the randomization, that I have a weapon that unfortunately the RNG has said at the moment that no one can use. That's something I'm now keeping in the back of my mind, that I have this weapon that is, even someone could use it now. Atma weapon's very bad at level 3 because it's based off, the formula for damage is based off of your level and how much HP you have. And so it's not even useful right now, but it will be doing a lot of damage late game. And so that's something I'm putting in the back of my brain. There's a lot of it. I have to remember what magic I have, what espers I have, what equipment I'm finding. Especially because, like with a normal RPG, when you're playing casually, you'll get an equipment, new weapon, and you immediately go into your menu and you'll equip it. Menuing takes time. It's probably the biggest time loss in Worlds Collide. You want to reduce how often you are in menus, so you save all your menuing for one big burst. It's why you haven't seen me equip anything on anyone for the most part so far. I will do that all in a minute. Because I don't have to fight any battles right now. So if I don't have to fight any battles, I don't need to go to the equip menu to equip anything. I want to do all that in one go. And therefore, you have to remember what you've been finding so you know what to go equip, and they equip it fast and efficiently. And you'll see all that in a second, because I now have found an esper here. I now, keeping track of it, I have found 3 espers in a character, meaning that all enemies are level 11, and I'm still level 3. So enemies are a lot more powerful than me at the moment, and we're going to kind of have to deal with that. But now we're seeing the first big menuing, because I'm going to go do my first fights. And I'm checking what espers what magic are in espers. I am moving people to the back row. I am seeing now finally what people can equip. And it's not a lot. I don't have a lot of equipment right now, as you can see. And I'm kind of going through, and I'm equipping various things. I'm putting earrings in Gao, which will increase his magic damage. I put the experience egg on Sabin here, which will give him 50% more experience, which will make him a lot more powerful in a minute. And then I forget to take my Moogle Charm off, which I should mention, that is a quality of life thing. We've added a few quality of life improvements to this game. You see in the fact that we've been moving a little bit faster. We have the auto sprint shoes like the GBA version of this game has. But we also start you off with 3 Moogle Charms and change that so that anyone can equip a Moogle Charm, which means that which basically means you can avoid random encounters if you want. And I come to the Velt because Gao has 2 checks, and one of them is this check on the Velt, where you need to fight battles on the Velt with 3 or less characters. And there is a 3/8 chance after a fight that a character or an esper will appear. In this case, it was an esper. And so that gives us another check, giving us 4 espers now. And I'm now come back to the airship because in order for that check to work, I could only do it if I had 3 characters. So I actually kind of did something quick and smart when I did Gogo's check and I got Gao. I recognized I had Gao, and I knew immediately I wanted to do this check at some point before I took any battles. So I actually purposely didn't put Gogo in my party. And now I came back, grabbed him. I'm equipping things on him, checking all that, and now going to do Gao's second and final check, which is wow, why am I blanking on the name of the Serpent's Trench here? So, not all characters are equal. Some characters have different checks and different amounts of checks than others. Mog has 1. Gogo has 1, which we've already done. Gao only has 2. We're doing Gao's second one. Sabin has a whooping 5. He has the most amount of unique checks in the game at 5. So Sabin's always good to find because you really opened up a lot of potential options. But different checks every check is different, and they have different properties that are things we're evaluating. You just saw with the Velt that you only have to fight battles on the Velt to do it. You saw with Gogo, you don't have to even fight anything. This Gao check, there's no boss. It's just for fixed encounters. We have to fight these battles, they're not random. And that kind of sucks and is slow, but since we have to fight them, it works perfectly for us here because we can now get experience without stopping and taking unnecessary fights. different checks are different. Some they have different qualities to them. Some checks you can know beforehand whether you're getting a character or an esper. Some involve fighting bosses. Some will give you a lot of treasure naturally. Some just take a long time and aren't very good. There are just some checks that are not very good at all. But you might have to do one of them. And if there's a check that is not really great to do, and you keep putting it off, and it might be required, then you might get really behind in a race, because of that. And so when figuring out where to go next and planning out your route, all of those kind of factor in. You're trying to figure out the speed of checks compared to what they're offering and what you kind of need here. In this case, this works perfectly. I don't want to fight a boss yet until I get a few more levels. I mentioned that enemies are now stronger than I am, and therefore I want to catch back up, and this check is perfect to do so. I get a break in between two battles, so I'm moving some espers around to learn some more magic. Because one of the espers is teaching Fire 3, which is a very strong spell. It's good getting that early, because that's going to give us some strong magic for the early and mid-game, and even in the late game. Of course, like with most RPGs, or most Final Fantasies, there's a whole bunch of bosses and a whole bunch of enemies, all of which have different properties and weaknesses and strengths and strategies. I don't have every enemy in the game memorized. I have a good number of them memorized, or I can recognize with their sprite what some of their properties probably are. But with bosses, I have all of the strategies and stuff like that memorized. This case, for instance, I see immediately these outsiders, these ninjas. These guys have attacks that can kill people in one hit. They are very nasty, and I know immediately to run away. I don't take that fight because they are hard to beat, and they could probably just kill. They could potentially kill my party, which means I have to redo this entire check, and that's lost time. Worlds Collide really, unlike a lot of other traditional speedruns, really rewards deep game knowledge. You might have seen speedruns of some games where something goes off script, and the runner actually might not know how sections of the game work because you have a route and a script you kind of go with. But with randomizers and Worlds Collide, also, there's so much you can do. There's your route changes all the time, what you're fighting changes all the time, so you have to kind of just know everything. And the more knowledge you have, typically the better of a runner you're going to be, because there are times where you sometimes have to pull out some obscure knowledge or strategy or knowledge of some weird mechanic that comes up once in a blue moon. But that might be what gets you through to victory. Knowledge of what a random enemy's, weaknesses are, or what attacks they have, and stuff like that. And that's one reason I really like this game, because, like I mentioned before, it's hard for me to play this and talk at the same time, because unlike a regular speedrun where things are maybe more, reactionary and more mechanic, this is, you're constantly thinking and constantly planning, and you're constantly pulling from this knowledge you have of Final Fantasy VI, of how items work and enemies work and abilities work and all these sort of things. And so now we've moved on to one of Sabin's checks. Sabin's checks, a lot of them are geographically very close, which is good. And I picked this one first because it involves, Serpent's Trench, it involves 4 fixed encounters, but no boss. So I can gain experience by fighting these regular enemies, and gain experience and learn magic spells while getting ready for whatever the first boss fight I end up fighting is. We are still looking for espers, and we're looking for characters. I believe we have 5 espers at the moment, but we still only have 4 characters. And we need 8 characters and 10 espers to go beat the game. And you'll see in a second, you've seen this with other checks, but I haven't drawn attention to it. We're going to transition, and you're going to see a sprite here on the left, this brown enemy soldier. In the regular game, that would be cyan there as part of this cutscene in the regular game, but instead it's a regular soldier. That actually is very important. That tells us that this isn't a character. If this was a character, let's say we ran into Cyan here, or Realm, or Yumaro, or something, we would see their sprite here instead of this brown soldier. So this brown soldier tells us that when we finish this check, we will be getting an esper, or we'll be getting a item. And some checks do that. Some checks will show us beforehand what our character or what character we could or could not be getting. If, for instance, we were purposely looking for a character because we needed them and we didn't need espers, you might see this and you might actually reset out in order to save time because you don't need to finish this, which is something you'll see later in the run. I mentioned that we need characters and espers in order to beat the game. And I also mentioned that you might find items instead during these checks. We call those dead checks. There's a chance for any check that instead of a character and esper, you'll find it's not a random item. It's from a random. It's a random item from a pool of top tier items. So you're getting a very good item as a dead check, but it's considered dead because it doesn't actually get you anywhere closer to getting to the final dungeon. Now, you might get the best sword in the game, like an Lumina, which incredibly increases your offense and makes things quicker, and that's great, but technically it's not getting you any further progress. And this can be a little frustrating. You know, there's, I think, like, I forget the exact amount, like 10 or so possible checks in a given game that are considered dead. So there is that risk right now. I know this is not a character, but I don't know if I'm getting an esper or a top tier item here, which we'll find out in a second when I beat the final enemy as part of this check. So you've obviously seen it's a randomizer. RNG is very big here. I got an esper. And not only with what items you're finding, but you can eventually do a check, and it is random whether or not you will get progress or not. And so you're probably wondering, how do you speedrun this? And like most randomizers, we don't really, as much in the Worlds Collide community, speedrun as much as we do race. You know, running a given seed doesn't. What time you get at the end isn't too terribly important because you don't have much of a baseline. Because you could run another seed and it could be a lot faster, a lot slower if the game decided to be, you know, more or less kind. So we typically race, which is why for GDQ me and 3 other Worlds Collide runners are submitting a race, because this way you have other people to judge your time against and get an idea. That being said, it's not completely random. I average around 130 to 135 with my races. Sometimes things go a little bit longer. Sometimes they go a lot quicker. I've gone as fast as 113 before on races, so therefore it can really kind of vary. But that's why we don't really run individual seeds as much. There's a few people that do, and there is a world record for running standard race seeds. And it kind of works those kind of work very similar to the Minecraft random seed category as an example. But a lot of what we do is just regular racing between players. Getting back to what's happening on screen, I took my first boss. I did the Barren Falls check, another one of Sabin's checks, and I ran into one of the Ultras fights. It was the first Ultras fight, actually. And you can see, it was a very easy fight. It's an easy boss fight. I have some decent offense already, but it was a pretty easy fight. But I did get a dead check. That was an item. It was not, unfortunately, it was not anything. And that kind of sucks. That means that, luckily it was a quick check. It was a quick boss. That check wasn't a dungeon. You just go fight a boss and see a small cutscene at the end. It's one of the quicker checks in the game. And, luckily it went very, very quick. But it didn't get us any progress. And so now I'm coming to Phantom Train. I actually make a small mistake. I hit down instead of up and went to a screen I didn't want to, and it caused me to not be able to save beforehand. Because this is another check where you can peek. You actually get your prize at the beginning of this check here. In this case, the Esper Bahamut, but you're locked into this dungeon and have to finish it. Normally, you save beforehand. You check. If you don't like what you're getting, if it's a dead check or, if you don't need a Magicite, you need a character, you reset out and go do a different check. In this case, it works out well because I can use a character or an Esper, and it was an Esper. So this is one of these checks that are peekable. It's a little bit longer than other checks. It takes about a minute and a half to get all the way through, which is a little bit longer than most checks. But being able to peek it beforehand, knowing for sure you're getting something that is worthwhile for your given run, is very important. And in this case, I'm getting an esper that has Cure 3 on it, which is the best healing spell in the game. And I haven't talked too much about what my equipment and my items have been so far, but I have Fire 3, which is a very good spell. I have an Atma weapon, which is a good endgame weapon that maybe isn't that useful right now. I have Cure 3, so my healing is very good. And I also have the Throw ability, which is, in my opinion, the best ability in the game. Given Sabin here and Go-Go, because Go-Go can equip any ability, gives them the ability to use elemental magical skeins and edges, and also throw stuff like shurikens and ninja stars for non-elemental piercing damage. This ends up being a lot of damage. It won't be amazing at the end of the game, but it will still be very good, and it's very good at the beginning of the game. It can do a lot of damage to enemies before you get a lot of other kind of offense going. What kind of offense you have can be very random in Worlds Collide. It really comes down to what magic you're being given, what abilities you're starting with. In this case, I have a lot of good tools early on. It's not the most broken start, but it's way above average, which is letting me confidently feel like I can fight most bosses I run into. Obviously, there's still some doubt, which is why I do a save here before we go fight the boss here. One of the characters I have is Go-Go, who, if you've played Final Fantasy VI, you'll know that Go-Go is rather unique. And real quick, this is another Ultras fight. This is Ultras 4, the last one that will have Chupon, who shows up right now. This one kind of sucks, because in Worlds Collide, since when you beat him, Chupon sneezes your party away, you actually don't get any experience or magic points for this fight, which is a bummer. Some fights give you, some boss fights give you experience, some don't. Some give you MP, some don't. MP being used to learn magic, and you kind of have to roll with that. So this fight is not particularly hard, but it does kind of suck knowing I'm not going to get any experience from it. So, getting back to Go-Go here, Go-Go's kind of interesting because he can equip any ability of any party member that you have, and he can use the Mimic command, which lets him mimic the last ally move that happens. But his stats are very horrible, and he can't get any esper stat bonuses either. So I'm actually can't wait till I can find a 5th character so I can kind of get rid of him. Because him throwing right now is serviceable, but that's not going to be something I want to use at the end of the game. But I'm still trying to find that 5th character, and I'm now going to Sabin's 4th check. We've actually done a lot of our characters checks here. We've done both of Gal's, both of Go-Go's, and now there's only 2 more of Sabin's and 1 of Mog's left. And one of those 3 has to have a character, because those and one other check I will talk about in a minute are the only ones left that could potentially have a character. So we know we have to do them because we need to find character number 5. So I'm hoping here this dungeon, which takes about I would say roughly a minute, 20 seconds to run through. I'm hoping this has a character, so that a new character will bring a whole new set of checks that I can now go do. Because obviously the few checks I haven't done yet, there's a reason I haven't done them. They're slower. They're not as good. So I'm kind of hoping that I don't have to do them. And Mog's check in particular is rather slow, and it takes a few minutes to do, and so I'm hoping I don't have to do it. I'm leaving off to the end, and this is one of these risk-reward routing decisions to make. In a race, you could do a Hail Mary and do one of these less efficient checks, hoping that you're getting something important that other people, will need, but maybe took a little bit longer to decide to go do that check. And this is the crane fight. This is a pretty mid-game boss. I mean, they're pretty susceptible to the left guy to fire, the right guy to lightning. They don't have a lot of HP. You see, I already taken the left one out. The right one will be dead in a second. I haven't encountered any of the hardest bosses in the game yet. Most of the ones I've been encountering have been either easy or perfectly manageable, like this one. But I do have a very good amount of offense at the moment. Throw and Fire 3s are really doing a lot of work here. I get a Magicite and not a character, which does not leave a lot of options left. And so now we're going to see me swap back to the World of Ruin real quick to check Sabin's last check. I mentioned before that some checks let you, we call them peeking. You can see at the beginning of the check what you're getting. Or at least you can see whether you're getting a character or not a character. And this is one of them. At the very beginning, in the base game, you walk in here, a building starts collapsing, and Sabin holds it up in the base game. But in here, it will be either a character, or if it's a different non-character sprite, you know it's an esper or an item. And I see, he's in the top left there, that it is not a regular party member. And at this point, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And so I decide not to take that fight. And the reason is that I have 9 espers right now. You know, like I said, I need 8 characters and 10 espers, and I have 4 characters and 9 espers. So, what happens if I get more espers, if I get over 10 espers? Well, nothing really. Like, I get more espers to use and more magic to learn, but I don't get anywhere. I've already gotten my number of esper requirements, and any additional esper past 10 still increases enemy levels, still makes endgame bosses more and more difficult. You know, if I go to the final dungeon with, 8 characters and 12 espers, compared to someone who wins the final dungeon with 8 characters and 10 espers, my bosses are going to be 4 levels higher. And that's, so you're making the game harder for yourself. So at this point, I really want characters. And so I reset out because I know I don't, maybe I'll come back later and get that esper, but I really don't want that esper right now because some checks I'm going to do, I can't peek. And so I might do a check hoping it's a character or an esper, and I'll be forced to get an esper at the end. So I want to keep that slot open in order to make sure I don't get more espers than I need. So I'm now doing Mog's check, which requires walking all the way up here to the very top of Nersh. And then afterwards, I'm going to have to walk all the way back down. However, this is a little unique because also at the top of here is, you see Realm there. That is a check called Kefka at Nersh. It is a check that is always available no matter what characters you have. And there's a few checks like that. The Auction House was another one that are always available no matter what your party is. And it's the only check that's always available that can be a character. All the other checks that are always available only give you espers. And Kefka at Nersh is a little more unique. So you can always do it, but it's slow. You gotta walk all the way up here. You gotta do it. You gotta walk all the way down. You'll see in a second. The check is a little bit of a slow battle. So a lot of runners put it off to the end, and I put it off the end too. It works a little. It synergizes well with Mog's check because I can do both at once. But I did leave it a little bit, and turns out we are now blocked behind here. This is the only place left where there could be a character, and Realm is here, which means that you had to come here. Sometimes you get seeds where it really, there is not a linear check that everyone has to do. Character number 4, character number 5, character number 6, not like everyone, it's not like you exhaust every check and end up here like we did. Sometimes things are really well open. This one, unfortunately, we had to come here in order to get Realm as our 5th character. And that kind of sucks. It's a little bit of it's a little slow. And we now have to do this minigame battle, where if you play the original game, you know that these soldiers are walking around. If you touch them, you get into a fight. And I'm going to attempt to do a skip a lot of these fights down here. It's one of the few things in this game that is like mechanically hard, and normally I'm pretty good at it, and I actually did not get it here. And it's actually a big time loss. If you do it, you skip about 3 to 4 battles, and I did not get it, so now I have to fight 3 to 4 of these battles. More experience, which is great, but slower. You're going to see that now. Another enemy respawns. It's going to be about 4 of these battles I'm going to have to fight, unfortunately. And this is why people don't like doing Kefka at Nersh. It's kind of a nasty check, but it is the only character check that's always available no matter who you are, no matter what you're playing. This fight in particular is nasty, I know that, so I use a warp stone, which is an item that lets you either escape a dungeon or escape a fight. And I use it to get out of this fight because I know that fight's going to be nasty and I don't want it. this fight, while easy, since I got a preemptive attack, I knew I could run away right away, and that was quicker, so I decided to do that. And I get another fight that's, pretty simple overall. He's another mid-game boss, and you're seeing me, I'm throwing shurikens, I'm using spells, and he won't be too terribly difficult. I'm doing a good amount of damage, for right now. And I'm at the 40-minute mark. And I know that I want to be in the final dungeon around the 1 hour mark, maybe a little bit after, earlier obviously would be nice. So I'm on a decent pace now, because now I need 1 more esper and 3 characters. And that is actually not a great ratio. It's easier to find espers and characters, so I'm actually rather afraid I'm going to end up with more espers than I need, which will make fights harder than they need, and means I would have done more checks than I needed to do. So I'm going to be trying to pick checks that involve characters or me being able to peek beforehand. I do now remove Gogo from my party. He's now on the bench. Realm is a very good character. She came with a runic ability, which is not a particularly great ability, but Realm has in the base game the highest natural magic in the entire game. But Gogo had my Moogle Charm on him, and the Moogle Charm stops random encounters. So, because I took him out of my party and I forgot to equip Moogle Charm back on someone, I can get in random fights again. So I did not mean to take this fight. I made a small mistake by forgetting to put that on. So now I'm actually going to go in and do all my Realm equipment menuing right now. I was going to save it to later. One strategy I typically employ is that if I'm going to save, that's a good time to do menuing. So, waiting until I absolutely need to save is a good time to start equipping things and moving espers around and stuff like that. But I start doing that. Now. I mentioned earlier that espers have stat bonuses tied to them, potentially, that increase a stat every time we level up. And one of the espers I picked up earlier is the esper Zone Seek, which gives +2 magic points when you level up. And I've been putting that on Mog, and he had the experience egg on him. So Mog's actually been increasing his magic to an absurd level. I'm talking, he's going to end up 2 to 3 times more magic than he would without that setup. And magic is probably one of the most important stats in Final Fantasy VI. The amount of damage increase you get per additional point of magic is a lot more than something like strength. And increasing magic, having higher magic will mean you're just going to do a lot more damage a lot quicker. Which is why Realm was also very valuable. Even though she didn't have a great ability, I know she has a really high magic, and I got Bolt 3 and Fire 3. So I know I could be doing a lot of good magical damage with her, especially near the end of the game. So she has 2 checks available to her. The first one here being Esper Mountain, which is peekable, which I will see in a second. I see in the top right there, and if that was a character, I would see a character, but it being an imp means it's either an esper or an item, and I don't want either right now, and so I leave, and I'm like, I now know that I have to go do Realm's second check. Is the only other check left now that could potentially be a character, so I know that Ozra's Mansion here in World of Ruin Jador must be a character, and so I head over here. One thing that I mentioned earlier was I did a lot of shopping at the beginning. Different towns, different shops, since it's random, sell different things. But between World of Balance and World of Ruin, those shops also change. I'm in World of Ruin Jador right now. I was in World of Balance Jador earlier. But the shops are completely different. So this is now another opportunity for me to quickly check a few other shops, and maybe they're selling things that I didn't previously have. So that's potentially good. This check has a boss, and it also has 2 fixed encounters. So I'm going to get a little bit more experience, which is great here because Realm has no offense at the moment. Runic is not an offensive spell or ability, and we have offensive magic, but Realm needs to learn it by getting MP after killing fights. That's how magic is learned in Final Fantasy VI. You equip an Esper, and you get MP at the end of fights, which would then go towards progress of learning your spells. So these fights actually work a little well for me because I can sit here and hopefully get some magic on Realm very quickly, so that she can start contributing like the other 3 members are. Sorry, taking another swig of water because I've been talking for about 45 straight minutes at this point. The mid game here, now that a lot of things have already been kind of explained, especially in a race, once different runners are doing checks that the audience has already seen, like runner A has already done this check before runner B, so when runner B does it, commentators have already maybe talked about it. This is a good time for donations. This is, around this mark, there's a lot more of a lull, and this is a good time to start plugging donations for GDQ. There, a lot of mechanics have been explained. There's been enough of a baseline that the audience can hopefully follow things, but this would be a good time to start doing donations and plug in the incentive, which I will talk about in a little bit because we do have an incentive plan for this race. We see here our next character number 6, Strago, which is a disappointing character. I'll explain in a minute. But we do run into our first problem boss. Doom is a pretty late game boss here. He is pretty powerful. And he can be a little mean. And unfortunately, he did a move that froze Mog, who is easily our biggest damage dealer. And not a lot of people know. So Mog can only be unfrozen if we hit him with a fire spell. And not a lot of people know fire magic right now. Only Gal and Mog happen to. And of course, Mog's frozen, so he can't unfreeze himself. And so Gal's gonna hit him with a fire attack, and it actually is gonna kill him, which means we gotta revive him to get him back in the game. And that's frustrating. It slows things down. Obviously, our biggest damage dealer was taken out for a long time, and we gotta heal him back up and all that. We have the defensive magic that Doom isn't really that much of a problem, but he is definitely the hardest boss we've had to fight so far in this run. And they saw Gal being frozen, which I'm less concerned about because he was only doing a minimum amount of damage. And Realm hasn't learned any magic yet to really contribute, so she's not particularly useful here. Doom is a boss, it looks like a lot of bosses here so far are just us pelting them with damage, and that's true in a lot of cases, but Doom has a little bit more strategy. Because when he gets about halfway done, you'll see he'll start glowing, and he'll say Doom's aura has starts shaking, which I think happens right after this Mog attack. Yeah, now he's entered his second phase, where he gains image status, so physical attacks are very hard to hurt, very hard to hit him. He gains reflect, so that fire 3 I'm doing to strip will will bounce back off and hit me, and he starts doing a hard physical attack. Which is why I didn't use this Bahamut until later, because now that I know that fire is not going to work, I have to start using other forms of damage that can get around Reflect. It's why Mog is going to use Flash, Fire Skiing gets around as well, because it's not a spell, and why I saved that Bahamut. And so I have to change up my strategy a little bit here, knowing that's how that's going to work. Oh, sorry, I used Drill, not Flash. Flash is magical damage, Drill is physical damage, but does more, and so Drill's a very good tool for a single target. The tool ability is really good early in the game, and it gets a lot more niche use later in the game. So you saw me earlier using Flash a lot, because it's a pretty good early game move against these fixed encounters. It loses a lot of his luster once you get to around the levels I'm at now. But I get character number 6, who is Strago. Strago, he has pretty bad stats, and all of his checks are very bad. He has 3 checks, all of which are very lengthy. They're not the longest in the game, but I think if you averaged his checks together, he has the longest average checks of everyone. So I'm not exactly thrilled about that. But I'm now actually doing something that is optional here. In Final Fantasy VI, there are 8 optional fights called the dragons. They are stronger enemies that you don't have to fight in the original game, but they give you some nice treasure and stuff like that. Same with Worlds Collide. You don't have to fight them. Sometimes we'll have certain races that involve you having to fight dragons, but in this race they are optional. But dragons give a buttload of experience. They give 50 MP, which is enough to learn pretty much every spell on an esper, and they always drop a top tier item. And since I decided I'm in this area of the map, and that realm still has some spells to learn to catch up with the spells that everyone else has, I'm deciding to go fight this dragon because it is very easy to just come in and quickly fight him. You can see right here, it didn't take me very long to come in and give him a fight. Again, this is completely optional. I decided that the time spent going to this dungeon and fighting this dragon is going to be offset by hopefully the rewards and the experience I get from him. That I will make up the time by having stronger characters, and maybe I'll get a really good weapon or item I can then use after this. I'm powerful enough that I know what these dragons will go down very quickly, which I think you'll see in a second. This should be enough to kill him. Yep, yes it is. There's 8 total. You can fight 4 normally, and then the other 4 are tied behind characters. You have to have Edgar to fight 1, Cyan to fight another, Locke to fight a 3rd, and Strago to fight the 4th. So we actually can fight a dragon because we have Strago. We get an economizer as our reward, which makes it so every spell costs 1 MP. But MP usage is not that important in Worlds Collide, so it's actually not that great of a relic. It has very niche uses. So I'm coming to Fanatic's Tower here. And Fanatic's Tower is not a great check. The big advantage it has is that it is peekable. We will see, as soon as we walk into it, we'll see whether we're getting a character or an esper. And you see right there, Shadow, so we know we're getting a character. However, we gotta walk up this very, very long tower. Anyone who's played this game remembers how long this dungeon is. On top of it, luckily we're avoiding random encounters, but on top of it, we are locked to only using magic in this area. We can't use abilities, we can't use items, we can't use weapons. So depending on what your build on certain runs, you might not be able to do this easily. If you don't have very good magic, but you have maybe good offense with weapons, that's taken away from you here. And Fanatic's Tower is my personal least favorite check, but since I said I need characters and I don't want to go over on espers, I decided to take this because I can look at the character. I can look at it beforehand and I saw it as a character. If this was an esper, I wouldn't have done this at all. That kind of makes it, kind of worthwhile. But you can also see it's very long. One of the nice things about it is that the item in that chest is is from the top tier item pool, and therefore that's good. So you do get a little consolation prize. Genji Glove lets you equip 2 items or 2 weapons instead of a weapon and a shield. So potentially if you have some good weapons, Genji Glove ends up being really powerful. So it's nice getting that. I kind of put that in my back pocket, and maybe I'll get use out of it. But I have to fight this boss with only magic spells, which kind of sucks. But luckily the boss is Tunnel Armor, which is one of the easiest bosses in the game, if not the easiest. So this won't really go that, it won't be that hard. You will see that Gal actually can only use item. And the way the game's coded is they replace the fight command in Fanatic's Tower with the magic command. But since Gal doesn't have a fight command in the base game or in Worlds Collide, it is a glitch, because Final Fantasy VI was notorious for his glitches. It is a glitch where he cannot use magic at all, which makes him rather useless. But it was not worth swapping him out. He's still getting experience, and it's not worth the menuing of switching him out to another party member. So he's just, we just swap out of him when it's his turn to select an action. However, I am now looking for this dragon here. Since I'm here, and like we said, dragons can give you a lot of experience and give you a lot of magic points, and I'm still trying to learn a few things. I want to fight this dragon. the dragons are randomized. In the base game, you fight the red dragon in Phoenix Cave. So I don't know what dragon I'm fighting. I happen to get the red dragon, which I know is with the ice. I got 2 people with the ice 3, and you can see that it easily just takes them out. Again, this was optional, but you saw that this fight in particular was about 20 seconds in and out, and the amount of experience you're getting for it is very absurd. You know, you see Cure 3 being learned by Sabin, I believe, and Realm learning Ice 3. I get an experience egg, which at this point in the game is a little too late. You know, I'm not going to be gaining too many more levels. It's not as useful as the experience egg I got level 3. But, you know, that's another consolation prize for Fanatic's Tower, is that if you have good magic, you do have the possibility of killing a dragon and getting more experience out of it. Obviously, being higher experience will make fights, including the final fight, a lot easier. And even though it looks like I'm kind of steamrolling boss fights now, when we get to the final dungeon, that might not be the case. And so kind of getting every offensive edge, even though things seem easy right now, is very important. And we'll kind of explain why the fights in the final dungeon end up getting a lot harder than fights in the middle of the game. Right now, at this point in the game, typically, fights are not a problem. You know, the difficulty fight-wise is in the beginning of the game and at the end of the game. But right now, bosses hopefully should not be too much of a problem. We have enough tools available. But now I just need 1 Esper and 1 character. And Shadow has 3 checks available to him, one of which is a free check here in the World Balance. So I'm actually going to pop back over to the World Balance, and I'm going to fly up north to Gal's dad's house, where he has a check, and we'll be able to see if it's a character in Esper, and it is a character. So now we have our last character number 8, Terra. There's an item shop here, so I grab a few things I still need, such as warp stones, because I was almost out of those. I grab our last character, and now I just need 1 more Esper, and we're good to go. And if you remember, earlier I went to Zen, World of Ruin, for one of Sabin's checks. I saw it was not a character, and I had saved beforehand, and I just reset out and did something else. Well, now I'm going to go back there. You know, I know that this is not a character. It could be a dead check, could just be an item, but it's not a character, so it's either an item or a magic site. So if it's a magic site, if it's an Esper, we get our very last Esper. We get Esper number 10, and now we can go to the final battle. I pop into the inn here because that is a free heal. So routing healing in is another thing that happens in Worlds Collide. Sleeping bags are a good way of healing after battles, but they cost money, and they cost menu time. They cost a surprisingly amount of money. So there are places in the game where you can heal for free, and knowing where those are and be able to route them in is kind of important, so you don't have to constantly be going to the menus and healing. And so that's one of those in-game, you know, more detailed knowledge things, is knowing that you can do a free heal there. This area, there's no boss, it's another free check, but there are a bunch of treasure chests, and more importantly, there are 2 monster in the boxes, which you notice I'm opening them up. And you're probably wondering, well, why are you doing that? That can cost time. Well, the monster in the boxes are randomized in Worlds Collide. And I'm looking for one particular, this one, the Katana Soul fight. This is the hardest monster in the box. He is a little bit difficult. He's basically a mini-boss. However, he drops, when you kill him, he drops the item, the relic, the offering, which lets you attack 4 times the fight command for half damage each one, which, used with certain weapons, can churn people into really offensive power horses. In this case, that Atma weapon I picked up in the auction about 45 minutes ago, Realm can equip, and she can do a really good amount of damage with the offering with the Atma weapon. And we'll be doing that, and she'll be suddenly doing about 8k every time she uses the fight command. So I personally was looking for him because I wanted to make sure that, because I want that item. Like, I know that we have a weapon that can do really well with it, and we can get her an endgame build. Because while this is happening, I am trying to, figure out what everyone's endgame archetype build is. I know Mog's going to be using a lot of damage with magic. Sabin's probably going to be using magic, but also doing some throwing. And now I know Realm is going to be using Fight with Atma Weapon and the offering to do, a lot of defense ignoring damage with that, which we'll see in a little bit when we get to the tower. So, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of planning that I'm doing. I'm constantly remembering what I have, what I need to find. When I saw the Atma Weapon, I was remembering, I need to find the offering. If I didn't have Atma Weapon, I wouldn't have checked these chests. There's no sense in checking for the offering and wasting time if you don't need it. So, those are the decision making I'm making. I'm changing what I'm doing. It's not second nature. I just go check those chests. I'm making an active decision that I was looking for that. And there's no guarantee I found it either. I got lucky there, and so that luck is some of the risk reward that I am weighing as I'm playing, dynamically weighing on the fly. I also apologize. I had OBS minimized during this, and I did not realize that I cut the timer off. Obviously, I'm just blocking the hour mark, which we know is an hour, so I do apologize for that. I'm now ready for. I can go to the final dungeon, which I'm going to do. I am popping into these shops real quick to do some last minute checking. In particular, my armor's not very good. I didn't find a lot of good armor this seed, and I have a lot of money, so I'm just buying whatever the best armor is available, because it's better than whatever I currently have on, even though none of that is particularly, crazy. And I'm just checking the weapon shop, see if there's anything, amazing. There isn't. And then I'm going to go to the final dungeon. The final dungeon, if you played Final Fantasy 64, you remember this. It's very recognizable. You have... I'm sorry. Of course, this is GDQ. So, we have an incentive for GDQ. This part's unique, where people can donate, and it'll be locked in at this point, when the first person is ready to go to Kefka's Tower. And it is whether you save or kill Cid. In the regular game, when you get to Cid... when you get here, you can feed Cid fish to save him, or you can not feed him or feed him slow moving fish, and he'll start dying, and that changes a cutscene in the game. We have an incentive for the audience to vote whether to save or kill Cid. Killing him is faster, and we have a setup that if you kill him, you get an Illumina, the best sword in the game. Whereas if you save him, which is slower, you don't get anything. But you're probably wondering why that's the case, and it's they kind of give a little bit of the, do you make the runner's life slightly more miserable or slightly more easier as an incentive, right? While also being a pretty iconic scene from Vanilla Worlds Collide. And I'm kind of showing that here. In this case, I'm trying to kill him, which requires me to have to keep talking to him over and over again with scene transitions until he eventually dies. And so that's something that the commentators will be plugging as we're running this. And like I said, when the first runner is ready to go to Kefka's Tower, that's when the incentive will be locked in, and they'll come here and they'll either save or kill him. This is tied to a unique thing with Worlds Collide that is rather new. A few months ago, Worlds Collide just had its 1.0 release, and the big thing was a very complex objective system where you can do different things, such as have objectives for getting a certain amount of characters, or have objectives for saving or killing Cid. You could have objectives for fighting in the Colosseum. You could have objectives for suplexing the train. You could have objectives for winning something in an auction, and you can tie different things around it. You can learn spells if players do certain objectives. You can get items. You could make them hard requirements. You could say that in order to beat the game, you have to go, suplex a train or something, right? In this case, we've changed it where I cannot actually go beat the game until Cid either lives or he dies. That is if I went to the final dungeon right now, it would not let me go through until I do one of these two. And we conditionally set it up so that if you do kill Cid, you get an Illumina. So you can have certain objectives give rewards, which allows you to make some nice optional conditions with flag sets. You know, we've had races where we allow, we've had objectives that maybe will slow the game down but give a good reward, so players might have to decide whether they think the speed that they would gain from the reward is worth the time spent doing that given objective. I didn't even scratch the surface explaining some of the stuff you can do and some of the stuff you can get with this. You can even have bad things happen too. You know, you could have, we had one recently where every time you fought a dragon, it was an objective where the result was every other dragon increased 10 levels. So dragons got personally harder the more you killed them. We wanted this incentive was a nice way to show that off as well, that Worlds Collide isn't just getting characters and espers. You can customize it to do a whole bunch of really crazy cool things, and this being one of them, with people being able to vote whether or not Sid lives or dies. But, like I was saying before, we are now going into the final dungeon, and we have to create 3 parties, and we have to go through the final dungeon with these 3 parties, which means we are going to be fighting bosses not at full strength. 2 parties will fight 1 boss each, and one party will fight 3 bosses. And I said earlier that the middle of the game gets pretty easy, but the late game gets hard again, and it's because suddenly bosses that might not be challenging if I was fighting them with all 4 people get pretty challenging, because I'm now fighting them with just maybe even 1 good person. You know, I've been only using 4 people this entire time, and now I have to do 3 parties, which means 2 parties have 1 good person and 1 party has 2. I do some menuing, especially because I need to equip Moogle Charms on everyone. I do have 3, so I can make sure that all 3 parties avoid random encounters as I put them through, as I go through the final dungeon. I do make a mistake, you'll see in a minute, because I had a Moogle Charm on Go-Go earlier, and when I took him out of my party, I never removed it, and it caused me to forget where my 3rd Moogle Charm was for a second, which I kind of try to handle right now, because I go and I can't find it, and that confuses me, and it takes me a minute to remember where that is. That was a fail on my part. Because I see it on Gal, but I need that here, and so then I remember, oh wait, Go-Go has it, so I go remove from Go-Go right now. Now I can get going. So that was a little bit of a time loss I wasn't particularly happy about, due to a small dumb mistake. But, I speed through. Parties 1 and 2 will fight 1 boss each, and party 3 will fight 3 bosses. There's also 1 optional boss, which we passed, that I'm not going to fight because he's optional. And there are 2 dragons here, which I will fight. Normally I don't, but especially with the case of Realm here, I will be fighting a dragon in a minute with Realm, because Realm will be using that Atma weapon offering combo I mentioned. Atma weapon's damage is very, its formula is very unique, where it's based off of the percentage of HP you currently have. So if you're at max HP, that's 100, and your level impacts how much damage you do. And so leveling up has a direct increase in damage, and since I'm attacking 4 times, it's very noticeable even getting a few more levels at this point. So I will be I'll be fighting that dragon with Realm. I park her near there in order to do some safety strats in a minute, because Party 3 will be fighting its first boss of 3 here. So I'm doing some equipping. You can see I never equipped anything on Mog this entire time, because I felt like I didn't have anything good, and that would have been a waste of menu time to go do. So I'm equipping some things. I'm learning some last minute spells, and I go and fight this boss. So this has 2 good people, where every other party only has 1. Since I know I'm fighting 3 bosses, I front loaded this party a little bit more. But it's still a little bit tricky, especially Rexel here, who is very high magic defense. And I do make a giant mistake here, where I had a big brain fart, and I, for some reason, thought he was weak to Pearl, and I got wires in my head mixed up, crossed, because he absorbs Pearl. I don't know what I was thinking there. Not a big deal, because he was right max health anyway, but I did waste that Pearl Rod, which was slightly disappointing. Rexel is weak to ice, but he has a very high magic defense, which is why these spells are not doing as much as you would think. So I know it's going to be not a hard fight. He doesn't have a lot of scary moves, but it's going to be a little lengthy. And a little slow, because I have to keep only targeting him because I don't. The Soul Sabers will keep respawning, so there's no sense even attacking them. It's kind of how this fight works. We do have some quality of life things that are added in, and one of them is this fight, where in the original game, you could only attack Rexall after he possessed someone and you killed that person, then he would spawn. We removed that because that was slow and a lot of micromanaging, and ultimately we found that to not be fun, so we did remove that. There's a few other boss fights that we've changed a few small things with their mechanics to, not drive us insane. A few small fixes. We have a few quality of life things like that. The sword tech meter increases to 3 times the length instead of the slow as molasses pace it did before. We just added a few things like that. I mentioned auto sprint shoes being on, and movable charms as well. Just some things to make it so that it's just slightly nicer to play. So I'm doing some saving here, and then I'm going to actually swap back over to Realms group, who's by that dragon. And I'm now going to equip stuff on her, because I hadn't yet, and now that I'm at a save point, I can utilize a minor glitch here, where when you have multiple parties, if one is on a save point, if you don't move, any other party you switch to can also save and use sleeping bags and tents. So I kind of take advantage of that here by doing that and double checking my equipment and going to do this this fight, and then see if there's any more spells I can kind of learn. It's not the most optimal menu I've ever done. I triple checked myself when I didn't have to, and lost a little bit of time. Like I said, I think a lot of time lost for Worlds Collide is menuing, and minimizing the number of menu you're doing and being efficient is very hard, especially because unlike when you see the blind menuing in like the FF8 run from GDQ a few years ago, they know where everything is in their menu. With randomizer, since I'm going to have different equipment and different items and different magic, every run, my menu is going to look different. So it's not a matter of memorizing, I gotta hit down twice. I'm gonna have to look at it and see, I need to go and select this and do this. And, it's, like I said, like, nothing's automatic. Everything in this is, you're always thinking. And so even that, like, it looked like I was wasting a lot of time moving around that esper menu. Those spells on those espers are unique to just this run. So, there's a lot I'm processing and making decisions with. So menuing is very difficult because it's not just a reflexive thing. Your menuing strategy literally changes every single time because you have different items and abilities every single time. But I take that fight, and then I'm going to do one more dragon fight with Mog's group here because Mog is so high level that it should not take very long. I'm hoping I maybe get an item that will make the final fight a little bit quicker. One thing about Worlds Collide is that the final fight actually is not randomized. Why there's a technical reason why it's not, it actually works very well for running, because it means we have a known end state. We know what we want to end up with. We know what the final challenge is going to be, what moves are being used, therefore what moves we should have, what items we should have to handle it. And that actually works very well because, like I said, I am planning out my builds on the fly. As I'm going, I'm not only picking items and magic and abilities that work well in, against immediate bosses when I'm a low level, but I'm also planning out what my endgame build is going to look like. Like that Atma weapon earlier, since it's based off level, does not work well at a low level, but it works well at a high level. So knowing what the end boss is means I can be picking things and learning things with that in mind and try to factor it into my menuing, optimization, and routing as I go. And I'll kind of go into the intricacies of the final boss because it actually is rather intricate. And there's a lot of different strategies and a lot of different things can happen and a lot of things to kind of balance. But now I'm getting ready for the last little bit of a boss gauntlet. We've probably finished the first half of the dungeon right now, and we're ready to do the second half. And this can be scary. There are 4 bosses left, and, if it's a really hard boss, you actually might get in a situation where your party, the 1 or 2 people you have on a given path might not be good enough to fight that boss. It might not be something you could accomplish. The worst thing you want but sometimes have to do is you don't want to warp out and restructure your party and come back in, because that's a huge time loss. And therefore, I try to, with the best of my ability, plan my parties so that everyone could theoretically handle any potential boss thrown at me, because it could be any potential boss I haven't fought yet, and I don't know yet. It could be really easy, or it could be something really difficult, and this part gets very nerve-wracking for that reason. Luckily, this is the first boss in the game, and therefore a very easy boss to fight. With how scaling works, even easy bosses, the endgame, can still have a trick or two up their sleeve. This guy's not going to wipe me, but, you know, he could pull out something nasty, or at least something that slows me down. So it's not necessarily a cakewalk. You know, the scaling algorithm is made so that endgame bosses, even at a low level, are possible, but definitely more challenging than early bosses at the same level. But early game bosses at the end game can still put up a little bit of fight, or be a little scary, or surprise you sometimes. So they're not a complete cakewalk. Though with Mog being as powerful as he is, not as big of a deal here. So now I have one boss left on each path. Each fight has to do one more boss. I checked the hidden chest down here, because that is our meme validation chest, very similar to the Link to the Past randomizer. And we run into the Kefka fight from about halfway through the game, which when I'm commentating matches I love, because we always make the dad joke of, you know, Kefka, we're about to fight you in a second, just hold on. Because it's the Kefka fight from the Battle of Narsh halfway through the base game. He's not difficult though, and he goes down very quickly after this last Fire 3. And so, emotionally as a runner, each time I do one of these bosses and it's an easy boss, there's a big sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, you know, that's awesome. I don't have to potentially reset out, or sometimes you have to reset and try a boss multiple times, and that's obviously a big time loss. And so that makes me feel a lot better. So this party's done. I am now healing up. I'm doing my final equips on these last two characters. And I put Siren in particular, I put on Gal, because Siren actually is an esper that is very important for the final boss. If you have Siren, part of the final boss gets a lot easier, which I will explain in a second. So that was actually on purpose, equipping Siren on Gal. And now we go with Siam, who can use that Illumina I found from the Sid incentive. So, if, in this case, GDQ, if they had voted for killing Sid, that actually would have made my life a lot easier, because now Sabin has that has the best sword in the game he can use, which he will be in a second. You'll kind of see the power. Well, actually, he will not be here, because this is Tritok. So, Tritok's an interesting boss. He's not hard, but he is a wall, because he has very high physical attack, and he is immune to every element that isn't fire. So if you don't have fire or defense ignoring abilities, you will have a hard time fighting and beating Tritok, even if Tritok himself is not terribly hard. You know, he can't really do a lot to kill me, and luckily, I mean, Sabin has Fire 3 in these schemes. He's nothing. You know, even Shadow, who I haven't used yet, he has Shock, which makes him very useful. So we're able to get by. But there are times you will, you know, if you run into Tritok early, or if you happen to put the wrong party member here and they have no tools to be able to fight Tritok, you might not actually be able to damage him, which can make him problematic. He is a potential problematic boss, but for different reasons than, say, Goddess, who's one of the final bosses in Vanilla might be, where she's just a overall hard boss. He is a boss with a very particular strategy and options in order to fight him. Again, rewarding that deep in-game knowledge, knowing how to fight something like Tritok and knowing what works against him, is some of that knowledge you get to flex in Worlds Collide on the fly, which is pretty cool. Yep, so, and then I'm doing my last boss here, I'm doing my last equipment check with Realm, and then we'll get ready for the final fight. This fight is in the later third of the game, but he's not terribly difficult. He does have a lot of HP, and his moves can be slightly nasty, but I'm not personally too worried about it. You know, I do heal up Realm here, because Realm's Atma weapon combo is based off the percentage of her HP, so the more damage she takes, the less damage she'll just be able to do. So I do use an X potion, which will fully heal her, but I don't have a lot of them. X potions are expensive. I never bought any. I happen to find a few with some looting, so I want to save them for the final fight if possible. So, not a huge deal, but I am keeping that in mind. And I beat the first phase, and the second phase is going to be a lot easier because his second phase is weak to fire, which she knows Fire 3 and has high magic, so she's able to do a lot of damage immediately to him. Yeah, and I haven't mentioned too much about in battle, but like what I'm not talking about is there's a lot of mechanical things that are that look very easy that aren't. Menuing and selecting things very quickly is a skill that takes dozens of hours to get good with. One thing I didn't talk about at all was all the movement you saw of me moving around the maps and going through everything. Like, I'm rarely bumping into anything. I'm taking very optimal paths because I know them very well. I know exactly how my movement is. That looks easy, but it's really not. Even just stopping right on that save point. I mean, you might have saw me kind of screw up earlier and I walked by one tile because that's very easy to do. Moving optimally, flying the airship optimally are things that look very easy but are actually very, very hard to do and take a lot of practice. Making sure when you see me run through this area, if I'm not stopping in front of walls, it's because I'm not touching them, I'm not bouncing off them, and because I'm moving through them exactly in the path that I need, which is, it's not a Kaiser Mario kind of mechanical thing, but it is, it's not as automatic as it looks. So the final fight is 4 tiers. Four separate battles. We will pick our party beforehand. You'll see a menu. If someone dies and isn't revived by the time you finish a tier, they're removed from the battle. And so we want to make sure people don't die and they don't stay down because they'll get replaced by the next person on the list. But since we've only been using 4 people, anyone who's not those 4 are not really going to be that helpful. So we want to keep our party alive is kind of our goal here. So I'm picking my party. I'm hitting start. So, tier 1. Long arm, short arm, face is what we call them. Long arm there, the guy with the long arm, can be killed in 1 hit, which we'll see in a second. You can use instant death moves on him to automatically kill him, which really trivializes it, which is what this air anchor I'm using is. Air anchor makes it so next time long arm attacks, instant death will automatically happen, and take him out immediately. So it's, not all runs. Sometimes you don't have instant death moves. This air anchor is only one I have. But if you have them, you can make it. You can make this fight a lot easier. Face is weak to fire, and we need to make sure Face is not the last one to die. If Face is the last part of this fight to die, he will use Quake before he dies, which will do a lot of damage, potentially kill our entire party or multiple people, and then the fight will immediately end. So if anyone dies from Quake, they will instantly. The fight will they will be gone, and we won't have time to heal them. But since he's weak from fire, and we have Fire 3, we pelt him in the face. He's dead. Long arm was already killed by air anchor. He did a physical attack and died immediately afterwards. So now he's got to pelt short arm here, and you can see Mog is doing an insane amount of damage, and he is beaten. Audio isn't too important in Worlds Collide, but because of how this fight works, and they're not separate sprites, you only know when somebody's dead. You hear a small little poof. That's probably hard to hear with me talking. So I'll let you know when parts have kind of died, because it's not always easy to hear. Tier 2 here has 4 parts. Tools in the middle was also subtle instant death, so we'll use an air anchor on that. Magic, the kind of guy with the muscles in the back, uses a lot of really nasty magic, but he can be muted. And therefore, that Siren Magicite I made sure was on Gal earlier, he's going to cast here, and it's going to mute Magic, and Magic will then be basically knocked out the entire fight. We still have to kill him, but Magic can't do anything. So, between that and using Air Anchor, we have just taken out half of this boss fight. We don't have to worry about Tiger and Hit, the big blue muscly guy in the front. Tiger being the Tiger statue, who is my next target. Because between Hit and Tiger has the more nasty moves. So tools is that. tools is the middle part of the fight. He did that atomic ray, and because of air anchor, he immediately dies after his next attack, so he is now dead. So having an ability to mute and having instant death can really make the final fight a lot easier. Because if I don't have these tools and magic, can do some nasty moves, and so being able to having those abilities open to me to basically neutralize half this fight really is really great. We won't see that the next phase because I don't have something that would trivialize it, but I'll talk about it in a second. I just killed Tiger. Tiger is weak to ice, and he has some pretty nasty stuff, so I just kill him. Now Magic and Hit are left. Magic's muted and can't do anything. Hit just does some physical attacks. He's really not that big of a deal. He's not that powerful. He does, when you kill him, he has a move called 10 hits, which is 10 physical attacks that he lands. They can be, it can be a little nasty for lower HP, or if he randomly attacks the wrong people. It's not going to be a problem here, and we'll heal afterwards, but you sometimes have to be aware if your HP is a little bit lower. It's also why I save him to the, that's why I don't save him to the end, because if he killed someone during 10 hits and he was the last one left, then you move on to tier 3 and someone could potentially be dead. So now we just have Magic left. Magic literally can't do anything to us right now. The only thing it can do is it will still do its death moves, which is it can either use the spell or use the spell Quarter, which will remove 3/4 of our HP, potentially when it dies, or it could just die and not do any of those if we're lucky. It has a decent amount of HP, but like I said, it can't do anything to us right now, which makes things very easy. We just kind of pelt it, and we'll move on to tier 3 in a second. I believe it will be the next attack we'll finish him off. There you go. And you heard a little poof, and that was him dying. Tier 3, in my opinion, is the hardest part. You have two parts. You have Sleep in the front and Girl in the back. You have to kill Girl first. If you kill Sleep first, Girl will revive Sleep. Girl only has 10k HP, but she can absorb every element in the game. So you have to use non-elemental attacks on her. For instance, Sabin, his weapon could potentially cast Pearl, and therefore I don't want to use that because it could heal her. So I will be throwing weapons with Sabin, and I'll be using Drill with Mog because those are non-elemental until Sleep is dead. Or sorry, until Girl is dead, and then we can worry about Sleep. So there you go. Sometimes, depending on your setup, Girl can be rather hard to kill. Sleep has 40k HP. He's not that difficult for the first part of the fight, for the first 30k he has. But when he gets under 10k, he starts doing some very nasty and mean attacks, which we'll see in a second. And he can counter any move you do when he's under 10k with some nasty attacks as well. And therefore, I'm kind of counting how much damage I've done so I know how close he is to phase 2, so I can queue all my attacks up and do all my damage kind of all at once. When he dies, he's going to use a ability called Calmness. He's guaranteed to use it once, and there's a 1/3 chance to use it a second time. Calmness is a physical attack, but it's instant death. It automatically kills. You see it right here, and luckily it missed. That was not guaranteed it missed. It instantly kills, and since it was his dying move, it means you can't revive him before the final fight. And he could potentially kill 2 people. There are times where I've had runs ruined because I got unlucky with Calmness. There are ways to avoid Calmness. There are abilities, and more importantly, espers, that have abilities that can avoid it. I didn't get any this run. So that was kind of me. I knew going into it that was a coin flip. I was hoping that he only did it once and that he would kill 1 person, if any, and I got lucky that I avoided that attack. Because instant death immunity does not work against that. Anything that makes you immune to instant death, for some reason, Calmness is the exception to that. Now we have Final Kefka. He's really not that big of a deal. He has 64,000 HP. The first half of his HP, his first phase, we're just going to pelt him with damage. He's going to use Fallen 1 in a minute, which will bring everyone down to 1 HP. So I'm kind of waiting with Gao here. I'm going to... in a second, when he uses this, I'm going to use an elixir on Mog, so Mog refills all his HP and his MP, and then we'll have we'll heal up everyone else in a minute. You can see right here that Gal died due to a bad effect he got on tier 1 that was causing a small amount of damage. I'm healing everyone else up though, and when he gets halfway down, which he is now, he's in his lower 50%. He does this move. He's charging up for his attack Goner. When he has less than 50% HP, any attack you do will have a chance at countering unless he's charging up right now. So I know I can just swing for the fences and do as much damage as possible, which is why I take off the Zeit Shield and I use it, because I know it's going to do a lot of damage, and, well, the run's almost over, right? So what do I really care? After this, he's going to cast Goner, it's going to do a lot of damage, and after this, it's a little risky. If I attack him, he has a chance to counter with a very strong attack afterwards. So sometimes you might sit there and wait until he starts charging again. However, I've done some basic math. I know I'm going to do for 9999 damage with Bog, and he has less than that. I'm pretty confident he has less than that. So I know this is going to kill him. And, which it does. And we call time when you see the lightning crack now. With a final time of 1:31:13. Man, you know, for an hour and a half long run, there's a lot to talk about, and I feel like there were whole things I didn't even get a chance to mention. But I hope I showcased why speedrunning a randomizer, and a randomizer like this, is so interesting and so dynamic for a race, because it's not pure memorization. It's not just mechanical skills that are second nature at this point. There's a lot of on-the-fly decision-making. Every run has a lot more decision-making than regular speedruns do, because it's so unpredictable. It's in the name. It's random, you know, because we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what characters, what characters we're going to have. Therefore, we don't know where we're going to go. We don't know what abilities. We don't know weapons. That it really makes every run different. Some runs are a lot harder than others. Some you get bad luck with routing. You keep dead check after dead check, and you have to kind of overcome that. Sometimes you get less tools to work with, and you have to sit there and work with what you have. And it really can be challenging, but it makes every run so unique, and it makes races so interesting, because it's just really a lot of skills that runners like me have to learn and have to apply. I really think it's really fun to watch, and you saw my strategies, but with a race, every runner has different strategies. They have different strategies of where they go. They think, every check has a risk and reward to it, and some runners value some of those risks and some of those rewards differently. And so seeing runners race against each other in real time and seeing these different strategies and then seeing the outcomes of what actually works and what doesn't makes things really interesting, because you're going to see a lot of different takes. And I'm personally excited to show the world what some of these strategies can do. And hopefully you found this interesting, and hopefully, if this gets in GDQ, the audience will find this interesting. I think that Final Fantasy VI is a very beloved game, and I think that there is a lot of really cool, in-depth knowledge that comes out in a speedrun like this that the audience will find very appealing. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and I hope that at the very least that this video submission was entertaining and you had a good time watching it. So thank you for your consideration, and hopefully I'll see you guys at GDQ.